Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. I'm talking about current events in the online fitness community, and a number of my subscribers have awared me that Richard, aka Vegan Gains, aka Virgin Gains, has made a video debating Jeremy Ethier, I'm not sure how you say it, on animal proteins for gaining that there muscle mass. So let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of speechcraft and let's talk about this. All right, a couple things up front. Having just kind of scanned over Richard's video. Number one, I'm a little bit concerned for his health. I've always been concerned for Richard's mental well-being, but his health. He's like getting that soy face going, right? I wonder if all the phytoestrogens and all the soy and tofu he's eating are starting to have an estrogenic effect because his voice is getting more high-pitched. He's like, hey guys, this is Richard. You know, he's sounding more high-pitched. He's getting the big puffy face. I'm a little bit concerned. Like, I almost feel like I need to take Richard under my wing, and we need to get him on a proper pig and cheese diet and under a heavy barbell. But I digress. Oh, another point that bothered me a little bit. You guys know I'm an animal lover, and he mentioned that someone who moderates his stuff, she's got a sick cat. Now, I would be the first to say, hey, you know, donate to a sick animal. That's a good thing. But I'm also concerned that she's a vegan and has a cat because I want to remind people, just in case you're not aware, cats are obligate carnivores, and you need to make sure that if you choose to be a member of the kooky vegan cult, that your cat gets meat. Because it actually, vegan diets are horrific for cats. Every veterinarian will tell you that. Actually, vegetarians will tell you that too. They are really a problem for them. You're right, it's actually harmful to them. In fact, you shouldn't even put your dogs on a vegan diet. It's really terrible. Worst thing you could do. If you're going to own an animal, you need to be respectful of that fact, right? Just because you choose to do some crazy, bizarre diet, you don't put your animal, you don't put your children on a vegan diet either. So, over to the point. That aside. You know, Richard went in on him and talked about, well, he's wrong about just muscle mass and athletes. And look, they looked at some studies where essentially it talked about protein intakes for gaining muscle. And it noticed that it's generally capped off at around 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. And after that, people don't really seem to gain significantly more muscle. The problem is that that's usually with, number one, very young athletes, number two, athletes in a caloric surplus, small caloric surplus. The problem we run into there is that, and this has been noted by coaches and experts over the years, as you get older, your protein needs to go up, right? And for those of us who are not in a caloric surplus, your protein needs start to go up. And he raised some points with that, and he talked about, well, Jeremy mentioned the digestibility. Well, the digestibility is a big deal. And when you note over periods of time, you simply cannot absorb all of the protein and amino acids from plants. And it's not that they're incomplete. That's actually nonsense. They really aren't incomplete. And the other thing he talked about, well, you can buy supplements and this and that. Look, just eat real food. Like if you're at the point where your kooky ass diet to where you're so restricted that you're having to supplement amino acids, I really don't know what to tell you. Again, that's just supporting the supplement industry, which is way more inhumane than generally the animal agricultural industry is. Look, if you're worried about ethics, go buy grass-fed beef, okay? And that's what I would tell to vegans. Cows that have been raised in a pasture, grass-fed, you're going to kill fewer animals per 1,000 calories that you eat than you will even eating plants. Okay, that is a fact. Vegans seem to lose this fact because they can't do math, they can't look at stuff objectively, and they don't seem to realize these things. All right, people like me who eat mostly large mammals, we actually kill fewer animals for our 3,500 calories a day than you probably do for your 2,000 vegan calories. And that's just a simple fact. And again, anyone who knows anything about animal agriculture knows this. Okay, this is not even subject to debate, but vegans, they don't care about this stuff. They care about being, as AOC put it, they care about being morally right instead of being factually correct. So let's come over to the point. They talked about all this research, and again, that's one of the biggest points we need to highlight. I don't think the leucine content is that big of a deal, because most of us who are serious athletes are protein overfeeding anyways, because generally we find that is favorable for most athletes. I will agree that the scientific literature agrees that if your goal is purely gaining muscle mass, right, if that is the entirety of what you're eating the protein for, that's fine. You can cap yourself off at that point. That's fine. That's perfectly reasonable if you're a 20-year-old athlete and you're in a calorie surplus. Okay? But what everyone seems to be missing here and has been noted over and over and over by every strength and conditioning coach who works with serious athletes, because they were talking about strength training athletes. Richard is not an athlete. Richard has no experience with real training. He does a little bit of bench pressing, doesn't train his legs, doesn't squat, doesn't deadlift, doesn't train hard. He's gotten himself out of shape. For those of us who are real athletes, who are masters athletes particularly, or who are not in a calorie surplus, because I don't bulk anymore, I stay at the same body weight year round, we have higher protein intake needs. And what coaches have noticed repeatedly is that, yes, we know that's the threshold to where people gain muscle. There is more to protein intake than just gaining muscle. There's things like controlling connective tissue inflammation. Right? There's a lot of other factors going on. And what's one of the things every single masters athlete out there without fail notices? When your joints and tendons hurt, one of the easy solutions besides deloading is to, again, increase your animal source protein. And the reason I say animal source is because we get into an issue of digestibility. We get into an issue of food volume. Eating 200 grams of plant source protein, which again, you're only going to absorb 50 to 80% of it. So it's not even 200 grams. Look at the amount of food and the extra fiber and other stuff that goes with that. Gastrointestinal distress that happens as a result of that. Again, things like beans and other stuff, you're dealing with a lot of other factors going on there than just the protein intake. You start getting excessive amounts of fiber. And before long, in order to reach these sort of numbers that we're talking about, to get the higher protein intakes, because in my case, I eat 300 grams of protein a day. That's what I consume. And you know what? That's where I recover ideally, because recovery is a factor. It's not just muscle growth, guys. It is things like recovery. It is things like your connective tissue. It is things like connective tissue and joint inflammation. It has to do with things like bone density. The data has suggested very strongly that higher intakes of animal source protein are strongly associated with higher bone density. Well, if you are a strength training athlete, a weightlifting athlete, bone density is one of the most important things you need to focus on. Our connective tissue health and our bone density take absolute priorities, and those things are correlated with higher intakes of animal source protein. It's not just about feeding your muscles, because that's the reality, guys. It doesn't take much protein to build muscle. That's where people get caught up in all this nonsense. It's a silly-ass bodybuilder mindset. Instead of focus on what do I need to recover from my training, what do I need to perform optimally, it's this whole idea of, I'm just trying to build muscle. You're only going to use about 1 gram of protein a day to build muscle. If you're on anabolics, if you're on a ton of steroids, you might use 2 grams of the protein that you eat every day to build muscle. There's more to it than that. And you have guys like Richard. He's beat up, he's banged up. And what I would say to Richard, why don't you look at the fact that you are struggling to get into shape, you can't squat, you can't deadlift, you can't lift anything, you're weak, you're getting fatter, your vegan diet is not working for you. And he will say, well, I have a knee injury. Have you considered you have a knee injury largely because of your diet? Let's come back over to what I was talking about. Let's look at animal-based diets. Let's look at the data we have on inflammation on things like animal-based ketogenic diets. Go look at the actual research on that and look at the inflammation blood markers. You're getting to be older, Richard. And here's the thing that I repeatedly find, and I know a lot of coaches and a lot of other masters athletes, such as myself, guys who are still lifting really, really heavy weights, that our tendons respond very well to that sort of diet. We can train harder, we can train longer, and if you're going to be a serious athlete, it's a different world than just, hey, I'm trying to build a little bit of muscle. And what I would suggest to Richard is maybe you need to do what I do. Maybe you need to go on an almost entirely animal-based diet. Maybe you need to be eating 250 plus grams of animal source protein. Maybe you need to be doing box squats. Maybe you need to be doing posterior chain work. Maybe you need to be doing the things that will let you rebuild the connective tissue and muscle around your damaged knee so that you can get your squat up to 400, 450. Right? Maybe you need to be doing these things instead of letting a knee injury that is largely facilitated and aggravated by your vegan diet, because that it absolutely is a factor. Maybe you need to drop the dogmatic nonsense and accept the fact that you really don't understand anything about being an athlete. You don't understand about being a strength athlete, and you're destroying your body. Might be time for you to admit that, Richard. Why don't you run light work mode? It'd be a lot better. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.